Recording. Okay. All right. Now we have
Somebody's talking over you, Johnny. Somebody's talking over you.
No, anybody's. Can you hear me now?
No.
Yeah, I can hear you, but somebody else is talking.
Oh wait, yeah, come in, sweetness.
There we go. I think it was Susan. We've muted her now. She can't talk over us anymore. Right. Shame you can't mute people in the room, can't you? Mute you. Right. So we had a little bit of entertainment last week with Birchat Kohanim. We didn't finish Birchat Kohanim. I was going to do that, but Goldie has brought Erica, and Erica has come all the way from North Netanya to hear about bowing. So we're just going to do a little bit about bowing, and then we'll go back to Birchat Kohanim. Bowing won't take us that long, but it's. I know. Well. Yeah. I know. I can't be relied upon for anything like speed, that's for sure. Nobody can ever accuse me of going too fast.
No, but you're thorough.
Well, I'd like to think so. Right, bowing. Okay. So we are, generally speaking, we don't go in for bowing much in our religion. Okay, we're not a bowing religion. Hands up those of you who were taught as a kid that you're not allowed to kneel. Yeah, we were all taught that. You're not allowed to kneel on the floor. Okay, why not? Because they do. Chukat Hagoy, yeah, it's Chukat Hagoy. The Catholics particularly are into kneeling. And kneeling's part of bowing, isn't it? It's part of bowing. It doesn't have to be. And when we bow most of the time, we don't kneel. But the process of kneeling is part of the process of bowing down when you go down onto your knees. So we don't, generally speaking, do go for bowing including kneeling. When I say generally speaking, that's because sometimes we do. We don't, except when we do, right? So when do we?
And the Avodah.
Yeah, on Yom Kippur and on Rosh Hashanah, if you're the Chazan, generally speaking, in Nusach Ashkenaz at least, the Kehillah doesn't do it on Rosh Hashanah, but certainly does do it on Yom Kippur. Some people do it on the Kehillah do it on Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so we do it in the Yomim Noraim, and particularly it is in the Musaf of Yom Kippur. That's the additional service of Yom Kippur. And the reason is because what are we actually saying when we bow down? Not Aleinu. We'll come to Aleinu in a bit, Hannah. The bit that we're saying in Yom Kippur Musaf when we bow down is Kohanim, and the Kohanim, which we're talking about now, as it so happens, when they and the people, the Kohanim said the Shem Hamaforash, the explicit name of God. She's got like 20, however many letters, all sorts of different ones with different letters, completely unpronounceable because you're not meant to pronounce it. In English, it's called, who knows what it's called in English? No, the tetragrammaton is 4. Tetra is 4, isn't it? So that's Yud Kei Vav Kei. The tetragrammaton is Yud Kei Vav Kei. What is that long name of Hashem, the Shem HaMeforash? What's it called in English? Yes, very good. It is something with F. It's called the ineffable name. The ineffable. Effable means to pronounce. So it's called the ineffable name. If you look up in a dictionary or a Google or something, ineffable name, that will tell you that is the unpronounceable and not allowed to be pronounced name of Hashem. When was it pronounced? On Yom Kippur, in the middle of the Avodah. And when the Kohanim said that, what do we say? V'ha'am, and the people, hayu, korim, umishtachavim, umodim, v'noflim al pneihem. Those are the words in the Machzor, right? Let's go through each one. V'ha'am, and the people, keshahayu shom'im, when they heard this name, hayu korim, they would bend down. Korea is to bend. Okay. Where do we have that word? You say it a few times a day. And Aleinu, anachnu Korim umishtachavim umodim. Okay, so korim means to bend. It means to bend with the knees. So with the people, hayu korim, they would bend. Hayu korim umishtachavim. That bowing down with your body is mishtachavim. Umodim, and well, what do we know what the word modim means, don't we? It means to thank or to admit or to acknowledge. We did this when we did modim. So although we have the idea of modim being bowing down, the word modim has nothing to do with bowing. It's become a bow because we bow at modim. So we understand it to be bowing, but it's not the actual word. The actual word means to thank or to acknowledge. So, and that the people, ha'am kasha hayu shomim, when they heard this ineffable name, hayu korim, they would bend. Umishtachavim, they would bend their knees. Umishtachavim, they would bend their body. Umodim, and they would acknowledge. What's the next bit? Correct. V'noflim al pneihem, and they would fall on their faces. And so, what do we do when we're doing that? We fall on our faces, and you can't fall on your face without kneeling, right? So that's the time in the year when we do actually kneel, but we don't kneel any other time because of Chukat HaGoy. So the procedure for bowing on Yom Kippur is different to all the other bowings in the year. What does it look like when we do that? Odd. Okay. Well, it's odd if you're not used to it, Leslie. What if you lived in Luton?
That's what they do every day.
Right.
Our cousins do it all the time.
Correct. That's why I said if you live in Luton. Right. If you live in Luton, you can see it all the time. They stop wherever they are, flick out the magic carpet, and off they go. And how many times a day do the Muslims pray? 5 times a day. Okay. And 5 times a day they do this their modim stuff, their anachnu korim, their prostrations. So it looks like that, doesn't it? So it's very interesting because there are certain, it's not the halacha, but there are certain opinions that say that we shouldn't do it even on Yom Kippur because it's chukat hagoy and it's copying. Of course, it's not copying the Muslims. We were there first, correct. Why do they do it 5 times a day?
To be there and
How many times do we daven a day? 3. Except on Yom Kippur. How many times do we do on Yom Kippur? 5, correct. Kol Nidrei, Shacharit, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah. Okay? 4 on Shabbos, yeah. So 5 on Yom Kippur. So the Muslims 5 is equating to our Yom Kippur. So that's how we bend and bow on Yom Kippur. Why? Because we're actually doing what we're saying. When we go down, we're saying v'ha'am kashahayu shomim, when they heard et Shema Meforash. The other there's another girsa, that's another version that says Shema Nichbad v'Hanorah, the terrible and holy name, that name that we don't hear only on Yom Kippur. When they heard that, instinctively they bowed down, because we know that bowing down in the Torah is very common, isn't it? It's full of bowing down. Moshe Rabbeinu's forever falling on his face, right? Whenever there was a problem, we gave him tzoros. Whenever we gave him tzoros, what did he do? Nofel al panav, fell on his face. Falling on his face is an example, a demonstration of what? Of throwing yourself at the mercy of either HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that case, or if you're in front of the king, what do? You throw yourself in front of the king and kiss his feet and all that stuff. In the Akedah.
Going over there to pray and we'll be back.
Say that again, Frank.
I was saying it in the Akedah when Avram arrives with Yitzchak, he tells the others to wait there. He says,
we will go and bow down. Don't know. Have a look. Can I borrow your siddur, please, Goldie? Let's have a look and see. Frank
Johnny,
says,
wasn't it just the Kohanim that bowed down in the Avodah?
no, it was when the Kohanim said the name, Ha'am, the people bowed down.
Okay.
Frank says, I'll just say for the recording, Frank says that we say it in the Akedah every morning that Abraham bowed down. Did he bow down at that point? Yes, you're right. We will bow down and we will return to you. Yes, very good, Frank. Very good. And of course the Torah is full about bowing down and bending down. Yaakov bowed down to Esav, did he not? And it's a sign of subservience, exactly. Sign of subservience. So our bowing is a sign of subservience to Hashem. So that's the Yom Kippur bowing. Okay, we're bowing in that particular method on Yom Kippur because we're saying actually what happened. We're just demonstrating what they did. Yes.
On the Idiot Box television today, there was an item about Ben Gvir going up to Harabait, and they showed people nishtachavim, but they were full body length lying down.
So noflim al pneihem, they were falling on their faces.
No, but the people that were there, like they didn't bow the way you bow on Yom Kippur, like from the knees. They were full stretched thing.
They must have bowed to get there, though. You can't just sort of dive on the floor, can you?
No, but it's when it says mishtachavim,
no, mishtachavim is not flat, full fat. No, that's nofel al pneihem. That's falling on your face. Okay, so why would they do that on Har HaBayit? Paul says it's political. It probably is entirely political. But if you wanted to be kind, you could say that it's the holiest place on earth, and therefore that's where the avodah was, and they were overcome with holiness and wanted to do that. Paul's got his tongue in his cheek. He's not buying any of that at all, and we will move on. Okay.
Just to say, so we had 3 men who came to fix some glass, and I happened to turn to them and I said, of course there must be all Israelis because we were many Arabs there, and on they went. Suddenly, one of them took a piece of cardboard, he went outside, he bent down and started praying. And I said, oh, it's quite a surprise to actually see that in your own home.
I guess.
It's
very interesting. It's very interesting because you do get used to it. I used to play cricket back in the day when I was in England, and we used to play in a league. It wasn't a Jewish league. It was all the teams around, and of course cricket's very popular with a Pakistani population. So there were Pakistani teams, and at tea, in between the innings, the Jewish boys would all be there with their sandwiches, wrapped up in silver foil and their flasks of coffee. And the Muslims were all giving it all this, And what was amazing was during Ramadan, they wouldn't even have a drop. They wouldn't have a drop. They would play the whole game, not have a drop. They were very, very frum. But yeah, at the tea interval, out came the flying carpets and off they went. Right. Okay. So that's the bowing of Yom Kippur because that's what we're doing. Now, let's go to Oleinu because, again, that makes sense. What do we say? Anachnu, korim, umishtachavim, umodim. And so how do you bend in Oleinu? Most people bend in Oleinu, just from the waist, okay? Not using the knees. That's how we, generally speaking, bend in Oleinu.
But why? What's the difference?
Okay, I'm coming to that now.
Art Scroll says you bend from the knees.
And Art Scroll is correct because we are saying what we do. We're saying anachnu korim. We said before, korea is to bend at the knees. So we should. Most people don't. But when you bend for Aleinu, you should use your knees because we're saying that. Anachnu korim umishtachavim. If it just said anachnu mishtachavim, we bend down, then you would do that. Now, I'm talking about daily. Talking about daily.
So what's the bend from the waist?
Because that's how it just happens. We do all sorts of things that aren't technically correct. Listen, have you done the biggest Aveira out? No, you haven't. If you want to do something completely correctly, I dare say there are opinions that say you bend from the waist as well, but it makes much more logical sense. If you're going to do on Yom Kippur what you say, you should do in Aleinu what you say. So the opinion, as far as I'm concerned, the opinion that says you should bend at the knees as well should be the opinion, I think, is the opinion that makes the most sense.
Can
you want me to demonstrate? Well, I'm coming to Modim in a minute. So at the moment we're in Aleinu, okay? We're in Aleinu. So normally in Aleinu, we do that, right? The correct way, in my view, because it says Korim and Mishtachavim, is to bend your knees and then go forward. Okay? Because Korim means to bend the knees. Okay, that's how we do Aleinu. We should do Aleinu.
Right over here.
Okay, now.
Would you then just, that's two actions. One is the bending the knee, the other was the bending from the waist. So, in from the knees.
Umishtachavim.
Then what on the modim?
What does modim mean?
So,
Thank you. This doesn't. It's not.
but when we come to the Amida, we're actually doing the act of the bending.
We are.
On the modim.
But we're not. And that's why we're going to.
So
that's why I did. That's why I said Aleinu after Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, where everybody understands that we're doing what we've said, right? The people bent, they bowed down, and they fell on their faces. And what do? We find a space. By the way, we all have something to put our knees on, don't we? Mm-hmm. Why? On Yom Kippur, because you don't bend on the floor. Why don't you bend your knees directly on the floor? Again, Avodah Zarah.
Just like the temple.
Modim is the difference.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Because in Modim you just bow.
Okay, coming to that.
All the others.
Right, so there's a good question. Leslie has pointed out, and they've all pointed out, that Modim is different to the other bowings. Now, first of all, the question is like this. We bow at Baruch Atah, straighten up at Hashem, for the first bracha, right at the beginning of the Shemonah Esrei, yeah? The second one,
Magen Avraham.
and then Modim and Hatov Shimcha.
Yeah.
Why? Why those four and not any others? And if you want to do the others, because you just like bobbing up and down, are you allowed to do? Why those four?
The first one is because you just entered into the presence of Hashem.
Okay, I'll buy that. Oh, by the way, we do another bowing at the end, don't we? Or say shalom. Yeah. I'll buy that. Frank says because we've just entered the presence of Hashem. And when you go into the royalty, you have to bend and bow and curtsy and all that palaver. Anybody here been introduced to royalty?
Never.
No?
Yeah.
Yes? Did you bow or curtsy or whatever you do? No?
I came to a training camp that I was the accountant of. You just said hello to him.
Hello?
Hi there.
He could speak a lot. Huh? That was then the Prince of Wales.
Right. Right. Very interesting. My son, Dan, who, as you know, is the rabbi in Australia, he represents the Jewish community there and is often hobnobbing with all sorts of folk. And he was hobnobbing with Prince Philip on one occasion. And they were at this dinner. And he was on this table with Prince Philip, being the chief rabbi and the representative of the community. And he's on the top table there with Prince Philip. And he sat next to Prince Philip. And Prince Philip says to him, are there many of you around here? Are there many of you around here? That's what he asked him. Yeah. What do you think Dan answered?
Where were we in this? Was he in Perth?
In Perth, yeah.
Yeah. That's enough.
No, he answered, no, there's just one of me.
I like it one for one.
So, yeah, he wasn't having any of that. So anyway, I dare say he probably bowed and curtsied and whatever you have to do. So I'll buy that, Frank. You've come into the God's presence and you bow for the first two brachot.
So can you get up and show?
Okay, so very simply, okay, we're in the Shemonah Esrei now. So Baruch with the knees, right? Baruch with the knees. You can't see my knees on here. I have got trousers on, everyone, look. So Baruch, and then bowing, Atah, okay, with your head looking at your feet. And then when you come up, you're meant to come up like a snake with your First, your neck comes up, and then your spine. And you're meant to do that at the word Hashem. Okay? So the way it's meant to be done, of course, the speed that we daven at, it's impossible to do it properly, which is why it takes some people longer to do Shemonah Esrei than others. One of the reasons. Anyway, it should be like this. I have to put my capo on properly so it don't fall off. Not that there's much hair to grip it to these days, but anyway. Baruch atah Hashem. That's how it should be. Okay? When you first start the Shemonah Esrei. So Baruch atah Hashem. And then again for Magen Avraham, Baruch atah Hashem. And then we don't bother with any more bowings until we get to Modim. Why Modim? We'll come to the reason why we don't do the others in a minute. But Modim, why do we bow at Modim? All of a sudden, we've not bowed for 13 brachot or something. Yeah, 13. Because we are
Thanking.
saying thank you. Exactly. When you thank somebody, what do? You nod your head, don't you? Somebody gives you something, you say thank you. And it's an acknowledgement of thanks. So Modim is a sensible place to bend because you're thanking somebody. When you thank somebody, again, go back to the Torah. Yaakov and Esav is the one that always comes to my mind in Parashat Vayishlach. When he's don't stop bowing, he's bowing and bowing and bowing and bowing. Why? Because he's being subservient and he's, as it were, thanking Esav for basically not killing him. Yeah. So it's an act of thanks. Bowing is an act of thanks. Now, we don't bend our knees at Modim. We only go from the waist, okay? Modim.
That's correct.
Oh. What?
Right.
Right. Just let's tell everybody, Philip's just arrived, everyone. Okay. So Modim, we bend at the waist. Now, the question is, how far do you bend? You see some people who just bend their head.
Because they got back trouble.
And you see some people who bend all the way down. Now, however you bend, it's the same business coming up, head first, and then straight up. So, how far should you bend? Okay, let me ask you the question differently. How far should you not bend?
Shouldn't bend to 90 degrees. You should bend to about 45 degrees.
That's probably about right. You should not bend excessively. It doesn't say what degrees, but the Shulchan Aruch talks about it. It says, don't bend excessively. Why not? Because you won't get up again. Well, speak for yourself, Frank. No. Quite simple. It says it's an act of arrogance. To be so demonstrative in your bending. The Shulchan Aruch says there's a pasuk in Micha, one of the most important psukim in the whole of Tanakh. It's the end of Micha. Hatznea lechet im Elokecha. What does Hashem want of you? To hatznia lechet. What does the word tznia come from? From the same word as tznu'ah or tzniut. It means to be modest. Hatznia lechet im Elokecha. Go modestly, walk humbly is a good, yeah. Go modestly, walk humbly, im Elokecha, with your God. And the Mefarshim say you should not be excessively, outwardly, showily from, right? When we've talked about this in the past, right? If there's nobody in the shul that wears his talus on your top of your head, then you shouldn't wear your talus on your head. Because that is showing that you are showily being from. If everybody wears a talus on their head, then it's fine.
How did our Rosh Hashiva walk? How did our Rosh Hashiva walk?
Correct. Our Rosh Hashiva, funnily enough, I must tell you later on, Johnny, afterwards, somebody called me the other day, and I was so upset because he was talking about the Rosh Hashiva, and he referred to him as Yiddle.
Which
Yudel. He referred to him as Yudel. How from Manchester? It really upset me. I'll tell you about it later, Johnny.
Yeah.
So our Rosh Hashiva, Rav Yehuda Zev Siegel, who I've told you before, was a very, very saintly man. He used to walk like this. And he was tzniya lechet, and it wasn't shtick with him at all. He was a person, never even said a birchat shehakol ni'ev varo without a siddur. Never wasted a word. He was a big Talmud of the Chafetz Chaim. And had snia lechet im elokecha. Walk humbly with your God. So to be showy about your frumkeit, right? To wear your talis on the head when nobody does. And by the way, we've also spoken about this in the past. Back in the day, you weren't allowed a beard. Tzitzit, yeah. Well, if everybody wears their tzitzit out, that's fine. If you're in a place where nobody wears their tzitzit out, then you shouldn't be showing off and putting. Again, if you're the Rav of the shul, then that's part of the kavod harav, the kavod of the position of the Rav. There's no problem. If you're not the Rav of the shul, and you know, there's an Indian of Hidur mitzvah. The question is, why are you doing the Hidur mitzvah? Are you doing the Hidur mitzvah because to be Mr. Bigger Hidur mitzvah? Look at my wonderful thing. I just bought a beautiful new talus, and everybody's been admiring my talus. Is that wrong? Should I have not done it? Maybe not. Don't know. I saw that talus and I thought, wow, that's a beautiful talus. I bought one for my two of my children. I bought for, and I thought nobody's going to buy me one, so I bought my own. And it's beautiful, and I wear it for Shabbos, and I get pleasure from wearing it because it's Hidur mitzvah. Maybe I shouldn't. It's a fair point. It's a fair point. It needs tzorich ion, as they say, needs to be thought about. You're right, but it depends on the kavanah. Like everything else, Barbara, it depends on the kavanah. If you're doing it because you want to be seen as a big knacker, right? Shockling's another one. You know, if you're shockling because you know what shockling is, right? Yeah. If you're shockling because it really helps you concentrate, that's fine. But if you're shockling so that everybody sees how fast you're shockling and that you're really from,
very athletic.
Then that's no good. And again, it's all dependent. That's not mine, is it? Is that mine? Okay, I've got two here, right? Thank you. If you're in a place where nobody shockles, like the yekkers, generally speaking, don't shockle, right? If you go to the yekkers, they stand up. You know, real yekkers.
They click their heels.
They stand up straight. And there's no shockling, there's no moving. You don't move an inch from your place, right? Then that would be wrong to do that. It's all about hatzniya lechet. How did we get to that? Modim, that's right. So bowing for modim, you shouldn't do, the Shulchan Aruch brings that down. You should not do it excessively. So you should bow to about 45 degrees and then come up. But you don't do it with your knees. Now, what's the difference between the two Baruch Atah Hashem in the beginning and Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham and the Baruch Atah Hashem with at the end of Ulechana Lehodot, right?
But you say, no, or not bakashot?
No, there's modim a bakasha. So there's something that all those three things have got in common that modim hasn't got. Baruch, yes, Baruch. Now, I've never seen this brought down anywhere, and I've made it up, but I like it, and I want to know whether you like it as well. What's the Hebrew word for a knee? Berech. Bet, Resh, Chaf. It's the same word as Baruch. It's the same word. It's the same word, same root as Baruch. The word for knee is Berech. Now, I've never seen this brought down. Maybe it has been brought down somewhere, but it occurs to me, and it occurred to me while I was thinking about this for the Shiur, when we were thinking about doing bowing, that maybe the reason that we go down with our knees at Baruch is because of the word Berech, and that we are in fact doing what we say, like we said in. No, we don't. No, okay. So that we asked that question a few minutes ago. So leaving that aside, the ones that we do go down for, maybe the reason we use our knees at Baruch is because of Berech. I don't know. I haven't seen any other reason for it, but I think that's quite a nice idea. The three things that have got in common is it's Baruch and its blessing. So, and the modim doesn't have a Baruch at it, so we go down from the waist only. So that's now we have to ask the question. We've answered the question, why those? Frank's answer at the beginning, because you've just come into the presence of God. You've remember we've done the 3 steps backwards in order to do the 3 steps forward. 3 steps. So if you are davening over here in front of a table, you've got to do 3 steps forward to approach God slowly. I'm meaning to be in front of the camera. But you can't because there's a table in the way. So what do? You go 3 steps backwards so that you can do 3 steps forward, right? Now, however, if you are davening where I daven over there, and there's no table in front of you, there's no need to go 3 steps backwards.
Really?
I never heard that.
Never go, no reason. The only reason you go 3 steps backwards is so that you can go 3 steps forwards. So you see these people that go, right? No need. If you've got space in front of you to go 3 steps forward, you go 3 steps forward. It's the 3 steps forward that you're meant to do. So you've done those 3 steps forward, and they should be small steps, right? Not tiny steps, but they should be small. They shouldn't be huge strides. Why should they not be huge strides? Because you're coming into the presence of God. You don't bound in like, open the door and sort of run in like
Kramer
Who's Kramer?
from Seinfeld.
Oh. So you approach God with those 3 steps, and then, as Frank says, the first thing you do when you go into an audience with the king is you bow. So that's why we do the first 2. Good. And
On your 3 steps forward, you take off on your right leg because generally your right leg is your strong leg.
Correct.
So you're coming out.
Correct. So just recap on that. We did actually do this when we did the choreography a good few months ago. It's worth recapping. Right foot forward first when you're going in. So then you bow because you've just entered the presence of God. At the end, say shalom. Obviously, you're bowing because you're going out again. You're saying, taking your leave of God. That makes sense. And the modim and the atov shimcha, the 2 bowings at the end, are because you're thanking God specifically for, you're actually thanking. Yes, when you lead with, when you're going back, you lead with your left. Yeah. So that all makes sense. So it's all very clear. You bow at the beginning because you're just entering God's presence. You bow at the end because you're leaving God's presence, and you bow at modim and atov shimcha because you're thanking God. All makes sense. Now, why don't you bow in the 13 bakashot, the 13 brachot, which are requesting things during the thing? I want I want knowledge, I want health, why don't you bow at the end of those?
I'm going to expose my ignorance here, but it seems to me that at the beginning when we started Shemonah Esrei, you said that there were 3 brachot originally, not counting the bakashot and things, 2 at the front and 1 at the back. Well, possibly they're the ones that we bow at. They have the same status. And they've got a different status than all the bakashot.
They do have a different status, that's right. And that's another reason why, that's another difference between them. The question we're asking now is, why don't we bow at the bakashot? Why don't we bow for the 13 in the middle?
The one,
Okay, you're asking.
The ones in the middle, you're asking.
Bow down when you're asking for something? The answer is very simple, and we've already said it. And it's all about Hatzniya Lechet. The Shulchan Aruch brings down that somebody who bows excessively is not behaving in a modest way. And that is the only reason that is brought down, that you don't bend in all the others, because it's excessive. It's excessive. It's arrogance. It's an over display of religiosity, if you like. That's the reason. And so it actually brought down that one should not bow down in those places. And of course, now we certainly shouldn't do it because it has become established that we don't. And there is a very important concept of al tifrosh min hatzibur, which means do not separate yourself from the community. So, in other words,
it's also, Johnny, gives more importance to the ones you do bow down to now.
That's also the true. If you do something all the time, it loses its It loses its strength and its value, doesn't it? Familiarity breeds contempt.
Yes.
Al tifrosh min hatzibor is very important. Do not separate yourself from the tzibor. We mentioned this before. Here, it doesn't apply because we've got such a weird shul here where the Aron Kodesh is A, in the wrong place. It doesn't face Yerushalayim. And B, it's in a corner, and we have a situation where the seats are all facing different directions. We've got three sections of the shul here, haven't we? We've got the English section here, we've got the French section in the middle, and we've got the Israeli section on the far side. That's basically how it sort of pans out, isn't it? Well, the Israeli section is facing, the English section is facing that way. The French section's facing that way. Facing God's Creed, yeah. And the Israeli section is facing that way. And the reason for that is because we're all facing the Aron Kodesh, which is in the wrong place. So in our shul, there's no issue of facing a different way because everybody's facing a different way. But let's say, for argument's sake, you were in a shul. Let's say this room here was a shul, and the Aron Kodesh was where Barbara's sitting there, and the rows were all straight, and everybody was facing the same way, right? And let's say, for argument's sake, that wasn't quite towards Yerushalayim. Let's say that was east, and for us, of course, Yerushalayim is southeast. So really, instead of facing that way, we should face that way. But everybody's facing that way. Even though we're meant to face Yerushalayim, it would be wrong of an individual to face the correct way to Yerushalayim, because that would be tifrosh min hatzibur. That would be separating yourself from the community. So even if the community is doing it wrong, you are not allowed to, and it's the same idea of hatzniya lechet. Don't be what is known as, Philip's gone now, so I can say this, an uber-chochem, right? Yeah, you know that word?
No.
You know Yiddish, don't you?
Not really.
Okay, there's a Yiddish word, uber-chochem, which means an over the top chochem, right? Don't be such an uber chochem. It's an expression, right? Don't be an uber frummer, right? Don't be so holy and so frum unless you really are, right? The Manchester Rosh Hashiva could do it because it was, right?
And if you really are, then you want to.
And if you really are, you don't know that you really are. That's right. Yeah, it's like somebody who knows they're eccentric is not really eccentric, because to be eccentric, you've got to not know. Anyway, okay, so that's why we don't bow in the 13 bakashot, because it's the other way around. The other four are the inverted commas, the most important brachot. They're the recognition of God at the beginning, the thanking of God at the end, and they're the appropriate times to bow down. We don't want to be uber chochems and bow down at every opportunity. And of course, now it's become accepted practice. And if you did decide to do it on every bracha, they wouldn't think you were an uber chochem. What would they think? You think you're an idiot. You don't know the halacha, right? Because that's not the way you do it.
You bow down 3 times, Johnny, Osei Shalom.
Okay, Osei Shalom. You come back with your left foot and bow to the left. Then you bow to the right, and then you bow to the middle. Okay, so that's how we do that. If you want to know the full choreography, I will later on tonight pull out the link from the Shiur that we did on choreography a few months ago, and we went through all of the choreography there. You can recap on that. Right. Okay.
Can I make one? Sorry.
Go on, Leslie. You first.
I don't know why Ruby brought this up. In his Shiur, he was talking about the Kohanim, and he said when they turn round, they should actually turn round to the right.
Yes, always.
Always. So I said to him, why then at Osei Shalom do we actually bow to the left first? And we came to the conclusion, or I told him, I think, because I think you told me, because effectively that is, we believe God's main side. Main side. And that's the reason I think he sort of...
Yeah, so the two reasons which are connected. The question was, why do we go back to the left? Because Ruby is correct that when you turn around, you should always turn around to the right. And now that affects us on the bima, by the way, on the duchan, the Kohanim, which we'll come to in a minute. The Kohanim, when they turn around to the right. Okay, when you are up there and you've opened the ark, right, and you turn around for Gadlu Lashem, right, you've got the Sefer Torah, you've said Shema Yisrael on Shabbos and Hashem Elokeinu, everyone said it, and then you're going to turn around and say Gadlu, you turn to the right. Okay, always turn to the right. Lachadodi at the end. Yeah, I guess so. Never thought about it.
First of all, the left and then to the right.
Okay, interesting. Lachadodi, since we mentioned choreography, since we're on Lachadodi, it's very interesting because what you find is, and we find it here, the people here in the English section, right, who are facing that way, you find those who are not regulars here will stand up and they will turn around and they'll face here.
Yeah.
Right? Well, there isn't a door there. Why do we turn around at Lachadodi? To welcome the bride. She's not going to come through the wall, is she? Right? We should turn around and face the door. So in our section there, we should not do a full circle. We should face the door. Everyone should be facing the door because we wanted to welcome the Shabbat Hakala. She's not going to come through the wall. She's going to come through the door. So they shouldn't be facing the wall. You should be facing the door. The correct place to sit in our shul actually is in the French section there because they're facing the Oren Kodesh straight on, and when they turn round to Lachadodi, they're facing the door. So they've got the best seats in the house. Well, yeah, there is that. Once Frank first, and then Paul. Frank.
One thing you just said. You said you turn to the right. Right from where you're talking clock terms of clockwise or anti-clockwise. You're going to
Anti-clock.
The Kohanim come up. They make their bracha. They're facing the arrow. Then are they not going to turn clockwise?
Wait a minute. They are facing the Aron. It depends which way you're facing, doesn't it? If you're facing the Aron, they are going to go to their right.
Yeah.
To their right.
No,
that's
that's not their right, that's your right.
You're right. They're turning.
Yeah,
They're
that way,
turning clockwise.
that way.
They're turning clockwise. Yes, they're turning clockwise.
But they don't always do
Right.
that, you know.
And if you're facing this way,
So
you're also going clockwise. Yeah, you're going clockwise.
But they don't always
Clockwise.
do it.
Okay.
Johnny, the Kohanim don't always do it.
In talking about bowing, one thing we've learned from the previous times is that we never actually bow on Hashem's name.
Correct.
So when we say Baruch Hashem, we're actually standing up.
Yeah.
And
And I've noticed you're very, very particular about this for Baruch Hu as well. Baruch Hu, you bend for Baruch Hu, upright for Hashem.
it's exactly the same in Modim, where we are.
Yeah.
Correct.
Where are we at?
Correct.
We're coming up after those-
Modim anachnu lach, shatahu, and you've got to be upright before you get to Hashem's name. Okay, so
I just want to tell you that in my son's shul in Spain, Eureka, they don't turn around at the end. And if you turn around, you're separating yourself from the.
okay, well then you shouldn't. Why don't they? Okay, well if they don't, then you shouldn't. You shouldn't be the only one, that's for sure, because that's Al Tifrosh Min HaTzibur. Be interesting to know why not, though, because I think it seems to be a.
No, the entrance is the back.
No, but if there is-
It would be interesting to know why not, because that's a fairly
Yeah.
universal custom. Can you find out for us, Paul?
Right.
Be interesting to know why they don't. There must be a reason. They won't have just decided they're not going to do it. They must have a reason for
That's a
it.
good question. What happens if by some chance, the entrance is next to the Oren?
It'd be unusual, but if that was the case,
Then you'd have to say, Boy L'Shalom.
yeah, I don't think you should turn around because you're turning towards to enter to get towards the door.
The entrance was to the side of the Aron. And I walked in and they said Baruch, and everyone down.
So you thought you were the king, right? Okay, so let's just we've got another 15 minutes or so. Let's just go back and do a few bits on Birchat Kohanim. We're not going to get through it all, but there were a couple of things on Birchat Kohanim last week that I needed to. Before I come to this, I promised Johnny the story. Promised to tell the story of our Kohen, which I will do in a minute. But before we get to that, there's a couple of things that I wanted to just recap on. Because I found some more information about it. And that is, we'll talk about that one with the story. the washing of the hands. We spoke about washing of the hands, okay? Now, the Gemara in, Jeff's not here, but if he was here, he would tell us which Gemara it was in.
Sota.
Sota, very good, Johnny. The Gemara in Sota refers to a pasuk in Tehillim, chapter 34, which says, Tehillim chapter 34. There we go. Chapter 34, verse 2 says, Avaracha et Hashem b'chol eit. I will bless Hashem at all times. No, that's not right. It's not giving. That's the David b'shanoto et tamo. That's not. It's giving me a duff reference here. It's not chapter 34, verse 2, as it claims to be. But anyway, there is a pasuk in Tehillim, which is not chapter 34, verse 2, which says, lift up your hands in holiness and bless Hashem. Okay, so the Gemara in Sota quotes that pasuk from Tehillim. Lift up your hands in holiness and bless Hashem. So the lifting the hands in holiness, how do you get holy? You wash them, yeah? You wash them, symbolically you wash them. Now, what's very interesting is this, and I didn't know this, I learned this today. The Shulchan Aruch tells us that we all know, don't we, on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, although it doesn't really apply on Tisha B'Av. I don't think you do Birchat Kohanim on Tisha B'Av. Do you do Birchat Kohanim? I don't think you do. You do Birchat Kohanim on Yom Kippur. How far are you allowed to wash your hands on Yom Kippur?
Right here. To the second knuckle.
Yeah, up to the MCP joints, the metacarpophalangeal joints over there. Okay, to there. Now, the Kohanim, when they go to be washed on Yom Kippur, what you're going to do, Leslie? How far are you going to wash their hands on Yom Kippur? Yeah.
130.
Sorry? Oh, it's 130. Doff reference. Thank you very much. Let's just hang on a minute. I just want to get the 134. 134. Very good. Kuflamad Dalad. How did you know that, Paul?
Google.
Oh, you Googled it. Okay. Jolly good. Here we go. Yes, here we go. 134. I got a Duff reference here from this thing. Sa'u yedechem kodesh. Lift up your hands in holiness. Uvaruchu et Hashem. This is the second shortest perek in Tehillim. Shir HaMa'alot hinei baruchu et Hashem kol avdei Hashem. A song of ascents. Bless Hashem, all the servants of Hashem, ha'omdim bebeit Hashem beleilot, who stand in the house of Hashem at night. Sa'u yedechem kodesh, lift up your hands in holiness, ubaruchu Hashem, and bless Hashem. Yevarechecha Hashem mitzion, oseh shemayim va'aretz. Hashem will be blessed from Zion, and make so that's the second shortest.
Just say that before he did.
Oh, there you go. That's where it comes from. That's why he said it. That's where it comes from, because it says Sa'u yedchem b'kodesh. It means you're going to wash your hands before doing a mitzvah, i.e. eating bread and saying the hamotzim, what have you. I've never seen it done, but that's obviously why. What's the shortest perek in Tehillim? Yeah, this is 3. Hine matovu manayim shevet achin gam yachad.
That's it.
Yep. Okay.
Talking about washing their hands, Johnny, my father, and I say it now,
say again, Johnny.
Before I wash my hands for a motzi, I do. My father always said, and I say it.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not quite the same pasuk. Say it again, Johnny.
That's the whole.
I want to know where that's from, please.
Yeah.
Find out.
It's on my father, Oliver Shannon, but
okay, so ask Leo. He'll know where it comes from.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So that's obviously a very similar pasuk. I'm not sure
Yeah.
whether it's the same pasuk, just sort of.
I think it's two, actually. I think it's two joined together.
It might be, you know, a pasuk that they've not quite got right. My dad used to do that. He always used to say Shem Tov Mishemen Tov, when actually it's Tov Shem Mishemen Tov. So it could be that it's the same pasuk, or it could be a different pasuk.
Yeah.
Leo will know.
I think it's
That's
two,
Johnny.
actually. I think
That's
it's two.
Johnny's brother. He'll know. You'll tell us next week, please God.
Mhm.
So Leslie, how far are you going to wash the Kohen's hands on Yom Kippur?
Up to the knuckles.
No, you're not. You're going to do it up to the wrist. Okay. Which is why I asked, because it's surprising, isn't it? We're not meant to wash on Yom Kippur beyond the knuckles, but the Kohanim have their hands washed. This is brought down in the Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim. If you want to look it up, it's a very easy siman to remember. It's 613. Okay, 613, and it's based on the Ram. For Tefilah, it's allowed only to the tips of one fingers up to the knuckles. Okay, and then okay, so that's fine. Now, what about this? Who says the Leviim should wash the Kohanim in the first place? Where's that come from? I don't think so.
Did they do it in the temple?
Is for the Leviim to wash the hands of the Kohanim. Rabbi Yosef Karo, the editor of the Shulchan Aruch, says and I got this out here ready. We haven't really got time to do it, but I got it out ready anyway. He says here in 128, he says it very clearly. 6, where is it? And he brings a proof from Dichtiv v'kidashta et halavim, and you shall make holy the Leviim. It's a pasuk in the Torah. Mitzete lashon ze b'pasuk. Matzati lashon ze b'pasuk. I found this lashon in a pasuk. He says, and therefore the Leviim should wash the hands of the Kohen. And it's based on that pasuk. Doesn't say where the pasuk is.
So who used to do it?
Oh yes, here he does. Bamidbar chet yudalad v'hivdalta et halavim mitoch b'nei Yisrael v'ayu li halvim. You shall separate the Leviim from the midst of the Bnei Israel, and they shall be for me Leviim. So the Leviim are holy, and they make the Kohen holy. I imagine they did it themselves. Don't know. If it was because they did it in the base of Mikdash, he would say so. He would say because that's the way they did it, and he doesn't. He brings a pasuk to say. Now, what's interesting is he also says that the Leviim should wash their own hands first. Right? You've never seen that, have you? Neither have I. The Ramah says, the Ramah is Rav Moshe Isserlis, who is the gloss on the Shulchan Aruch. Generally speaking, Sfaradim pasken like the Shulchan Aruch, and Ashkenazim pasken like the Ramah. Generally speaking, the Ramah says, Rav Moshe Isserlis, he lived a little bit later than Rav Yosef Karo, and he adds that the custom is for the Leviim to rely on their washing before Shacharit. So our custom is that the Leviim do not themselves wash their hands before the Kohanim. They rely on their washing before, which makes not a lot of sense. Well, it does make sense, really, because you could ask, why don't the Kohanim rely on that? Well, the truth is the Leviim aren't really doing anything, are they? The Kohanim are doing the blessing, so they have to be a bit more careful. All right, so that's interesting. Now, what if there are no Leviim?
Bechorim.
Okay, the Bechorim. Now, I think I mentioned to you that it doesn't seem to be a universal. I thought that was, everyone knew that, right? Because I had learned that when I was a small child. But it seems it's not universally known. Rav Yuval did not know that halacha, that minhag, and I looked it up. And Rabbi Yoel Sirkis, a 16th and 17th century rabbi known as, you know what he was known as? Rabbi Yoel Sirkis was known as the Bach. The Bach. He says, and this is interesting, he says that he found an old machzor Now, when he says, I found an old machzah, it means that, I mean, he was from the 16th century. So he found it.
Printing press, it must have been written by hand.
Possibly. No, I'll tell you who it was from in a minute. And it was probably around about after the printing press a bit. But nevertheless, he found an old machzah where it was written that in such circumstances, a firstborn male should do the washing. Now, the fact that he writes that I found an old machzah means that this was not a well-known custom, and that it was something that he found in an old machzah. Where did he find? Whose machzah did he find it in? Well, you won't guess, but you'll have heard of him. If I give you a clue, Philip's connected with this famous person. No, the Maharal of Prague. What did the Maharal of Prague make? The Goylem.
Yeah. You know that I'm a descendant of
Huh? Yeah, he's a
you know that
Goylem.
I'm a descendant of another Biuda.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd be delighted. So the Maharal of Prague, who lived in the 15th century. Anyone been to Prague? Anyone been to the Alt Neue Schule in Prague? Yeah, have you been upstairs to where the Goylem was meant to be? It's an amazing place, that place.
Did you go to the Karl Marx Bridge?
Yes.
You heard, so that's.
Kadosh. It's on there. It's not Karl Marx, it's Charles Bridge. Charles Bridge. My son was in university in Prague, so I went to visit him there. Anyone have not been to the Charles Bridge in Prague, you can see the most horrendous thing there. There's a statue of Yoshki, right, in all his glory, with his arms stretched out and what have you. And on the top of it, it says Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzavakot.
Crazy.
And there's a whole long story about that, which I'll tell you one day.
Okay.
It was done lahachis. It was done to wind the Jews up, dafka. It's a long story. I heard about it. I read about it while I was there. Anyway, so it seems that the minhag of the Bechorim taking the place of the Levim, which we all, I mean, in Nusach Ashkenaz, in Chutz La'aretz, we all knew about that, seems that it's a fairly vague and obscure minhag. So I wanted to just mention that for you.
So what happens in practice is actually when the current scientist knows,
He does it himself. Yeah, and because the thing is, unless you're on the ball as a Bechor and you're watching to see if there's any Levim and you know who's a Levi and who's not a Levi, you're not going to, jump in there. So
would it not also depend on the custom of the community?
That was an Agatha Christie book.
I guess so.
The case of the fake lady.
Then it would equally be wrong for someone from, like we were talking before, for me to jump up and go out to watch them. That's not.
Would you be altif? I think altifrosh min hatzibor means to do something which is obvious, like we said before, facing a different way to everybody else. Possibly. I think that's probably a bit harsh. Okay. So that's that. We talked about calling the Kohanim. Right. We have finished now, and we were going to tell this story. So I have to tell the story this week. We will next week go into who. Huh? I won't be here next week. In 2 weeks' time, I won't be here either. Next time we meet.
Oh, you're going to be?
No, I'm going to England. We're going to next week. I'm going to do.
You're not going to be.
The next time we meet, we'll start with which Kohanim are allowed to abduchen and which are not. Okay, and then we'll go on to the David Hashem Ari. But suffice it to say, for the purposes of this story, that it is well known that a Kohen who has a blemish, we'll go into it in much more detail next week, but a Kohen who has a blemish is not allowed to go to the Duchan and do Birkat Kohanim. Why? Hey? Okay, I'm coming to that. That's the story. Stole me thunder, Jonathan. Right? Somebody with a blemish is not allowed to do it. Why?
Same thing as you're not allowed to sacrifice an animal with a mum.
No, that's not the reason why. You're not allowed to sacrifice an animal with a mum because that's a bizayon to Hashem.
No.
You give a shmati animal to Hashem. So why are you not allowed to? It will distract the congregation. The congregation. So imagine you have somebody there, and by the way, it doesn't have to be something which is negative. If you have a Kohen who is got some kind of deformity on his face or particularly on his hands. Because the temptation, of course, for the community is to look at the Kohanim's hands. Why? For what we said last week. What's resting on the hands? And he gave it away. Shekhinah, right? The Shekhinah, God's presence, is resting on the hands of the Kohanim. It comes from Shir Hashirim, chapter 2, where it says that Hashem stands behind the lattice work and looks at his beloved, as it were, through the lattice work of the window. So the lattice work of the fingers, I can't do it. Goldie can do it.
I learned
Right? Through the lattice work of the fingers, you can do it. Yeah, Erica can do it.
Erica's the last Kohen.
You're also a bat Cohen. Okay.
That's why we get along so well.
So the temptation is for the people to look at their hands. You're not meant to do that. Now, if the Kohanim have got something wrong with their hands, right, then the temptation is to look at them and it will distract the thing. We have a chap here that comes here on Daven's here, Yomim Noraim, who's got one hand. He's got a false hand. You can't help it. You can't help but look at it.
And is he a Kohen?
No. But if he was a Kohen, right, there would be a question as to whether he could duchen, because it distracts the eye. I once had a one-handed sandik when I was doing a bris. If only I had it once, over 1,000 brisses. No, he could only hold the baby with one hand, and I had somebody else behind him stretching forward, holding the baby with the rest of the baby. But he was the grandfather of the baby, and he'd lost his arm in the Second World War, and he had a false. Anyway, so a Kohen who has a blemish is not allowed to duchen, okay, because it would distract the audience, yeah, and that also goes for the feet. Why? Because they've taken their shoes off, and when they lift up their hand, remember they didn't all wear trousers. What did they wear? They wore them,
Hakama. They wore hakama.
those long robes that the Muslims wear. What do they call them? Those things, jalabiyas or something. Yeah, whatever they call them. They wore those. So what happens when you lift up your hands like that? It lifts up. So it lifts up above the feet, and it shows their feet. So the feet. Or also, you've got a blemish on your feet, you're not allowed to duchen. Now, there is a Kohen here in our shul who has a blemish on his foot. He has a very raised shoe, right? He's right. He's got a very raised shoe, and he limps, and he duchens. And this is the story. He never duchened for years and years and years because he thought he wasn't allowed to duchen, or maybe he was told he wasn't allowed to duchen. And when Rav Ido was here, I don't know whether he asked Rav Ido or Rav Ido told him without being asked, but Rav Ido said, you must duchen. Not only can you duchen, you must duchen. Because he got that injury fighting for this country. Not sure which battle it was. Do you know, Johnny, which war it was?
No, I don't know.
But he got that injury. He got his hip blasted off. And he's got one leg a lot shorter than the other. So he's got this big built-up shoe. And you never notice it. Well, that's good. So Rav Ido said,
I know him.
Not only can you duchen, you must, because it's that bracha that we get from you. It's holy.
And in his shoes. And in his shoes. Yeah, he doesn't take his shoes off. He doesn't take his shoes off because he can't. It's a huge thing, right? And Rav Ido says, no, that supersedes everything else. That the fact that you received that injury, and there's another fellow that used to daven here, a very famous guy called Ketzela.
Oh yeah,
right. Yaakov Katz. He moved away from the area. A very famous guy, used to be an MK. He also had a very, very bad limp from
he was injured. Yeah,
a battle injury. I think that was in the '67 war. And he was an amazing guy. Look him up. His name was Ketzela. He was an MK for a long time. He was the founder of Arutz Sheva, and an amazing guy. Founder of Ariel as well. An amazing guy. He had for a while. He had an apartment here. His wife wasn't well, and she found the air around here good for her, whatever. And they used to come here and used to sit right in front of me, where you sit, Leslie. Used to sit there. An amazing guy, and he used to duchen as well for the same reason, because you have to have somebody who's been through that, who's been injured, and for the protection of Am Yisrael, for sure their bracha is wanted and needed. And so he goes along, Chaim Cohen and Ketzeler go and they duchen, despite the fact they don't take their shoes off, despite the fact that they've got so-called blemish. Now, how can Rav Ido ride roughshod over the halacha, you'll ask me? Because there's a get-out clause, because the Shulchan Aruch says, in a place and a person that's had this, who's been a Baal Mum for more than 30 days, everybody knows about it. So nobody's looking, right? Nobody's looking because it's not a new blemish. If you see somebody with one arm and you see him every day, right? It's a big deal, no big deal after 30 days. You've seen. So Rav Ido relied on that as the source of the heter, but he said that as far as he was concerned, and I thoroughly endorse it, somebody who's been injured in that way should certainly not be prevented from duchening, but should be encouraged from duchening, because we want those kind of brachot. That kind of person who's been moisa nefesh for Am Yisrael is a kind of person that we should have brachot for. So we'll go into some detail next time about the blemishes. I got the Gemara ready to go through with you, but it's all Erica's fault that we never got to it because we had to do bowing first. I've got the Gemara out here ready. If you want to look it up, it's Megillah 24b. And it is, because I've checked it. It's not 124b, it's 24b. And please God, we'll do that next time. We've gone over time as usual. Any questions in the room? Any questions in the room? Any questions on Zoom? Okay, we'll stop the recording.